Our next technical session discusses about accelerating the development of next generation medical devices with real-time and intelligent data connectivity. To handle this session, I welcome Mr. Darren Porras, Market Development Manager, RTI USA.
Hi, this is Darren Porras, and I'm going to talk about accelerating the development of next generation medical devices with intelligent real time connectivity. Some of the challenges faced in healthcare today are increasing costs, lack of trained staff, inefficient care, and interoperability. We also have aging population and medical errors, and of course, cybersecurity. So I think many people are aware of a lot of these issues that frankly existed before COVID, but we're seeing a lot more of this really causing a strain, burdening the overall healthcare system globally. And because of this, we've also seen a realization that there's this need for technology solutions to address these issues. So, what are some of the medical device trends that we're looking at that are trying to address these issues? Devices are increasingly becoming connected and interoperable. They're also leveraging newer technologies that are continuing to evolve very quickly: data analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, using robotics to augment surgical tasks and other types of parts of the clinical workflow, as well as new sensors and technologies and computer vision and imaging systems and cybersecurity techniques and tools and technologies as well to make sure that all of these technologies, while advancing, are also delivered securely. And all of this is being leveraged to address those issues I mentioned previously to run across these central themes. And what's really required in healthcare is solutions that are more patient centric, so customized to individual diagnosis and treatments that are very specific to that individual patient. That requires leveraging all of these technologies, making sure that they're interoperable with other devices and systems and technologies, using all of this to deliver more automated and predictive treatments and overall improving patient outcomes. So when you look at these central trends in healthcare, that's the goal, is really to tie in a lot of these trends and technologies to really bring to bear and deliver these important needs for healthcare. So how is that done when you talk about the devices and systems? Well, if you look at a lot of the intelligent devices, and we can talk about robotics as well as part of that, these systems are increasingly converging these disparate technologies, and these technologies are continuing to evolve. When you talk about haptic technologies, AR and VR, and uh, electrosurgical systems, and control algorithms, and imaging, and advanced instrumentation. So seeing all of these things really converge to really influence the patient care in a way that could never even be thought of before. So it's a really exciting time that these technologies have evolved, systems have evolved to the point where uh, there are things that can be done to really enhance the care across the patient life cycle. And I'll talk a little more about that. But it's uh, it's essentially these converging technologies that are happening to make all this happen. If we take a more macro view of this, what does this look like in terms of other types of devices that are out there? And you can see that when you think about all the different types of medical devices and how they could potentially interoperate, what we're seeing is the combination of and convergence of those ecosystems. So you're talking about robotic systems that have electromechanical components, but it's not just about the robot. It's about devices and components that those systems are connected to in terms of monitoring, intelligent sensors, and data fusion. And now those devices are also connected to other devices and platforms and systems of systems, where now you're talking about cloud connectivity and device ecosystems. And in the mix of all of this is leveraging all of these AI and data-driven technologies that are delivering a solution that is leveraging all of this. So it's quite a confluence, again, not just of technologies, but of also devices and platforms that are really changing healthcare, and this is a lot of the trends that are happening in the industry today. So when we talk about this type of ecosystem, what does that mean in more detail? So I think most people are aware of a lot of the great imaging technologies that exist today, and the advances in CT and ultrasound and MR. So those systems are also increasingly integrating these technologies with intelligence and image processing and data and robotics. So similar to that slide before showing these kind of systems and ecosystems, we're seeing that devices are being charged and tasked really to do more than one thing. So in the past, we would have, for example, an imaging system, and that the main goal of that was essentially to do something, just a pure diagnostic mode, for example. Now we're seeing the convergence of imaging and also doing things more intelligently, and also doing that at the edge, really at the point of care. So to leverage all of this data and other types of systems, realizing that there's no one technology or system that can do everything. And so as a result, in ORs and interventional suites, what we're seeing is really distributed data across different types of systems and platforms that are needed to do something useful. And this is really a call to action for the device industry, because the to address those challenges in healthcare and increase the patient outcomes and deal with the shortages, then we devices need to be smarter. They need to be more intelligent. Need to integrate more seamlessly with the clinical workflows, and of course leverage all of this and these technologies to improve automation, to really reduce the burden on the staff and lead to more precise treatments. So this is a very exciting time that all of these things are coming together and moving to address these challenges. So what's the problem? So the problem is, or one problem is that these devices are, because they are increasingly connected, and that gives these systems, of course, the power to deliver these exciting innovations. It's very complex. These devices are very complex to architect, to design, and develop. Showing these two diagrams here. On the left is a surgical box communications that are very typical for a lot of the systems that are out there today. And on the right, we talk about a critical care scenario where you have infusion pumps and patient monitors and ventilators and so many devices that are really connected to the patient bed, and they don't talk to each other. They don't really share data and do intelligent things. And there's a lot of still manual operation and burden that's on nurses and surgeons and the OR staff to log, automate, and also make sure that for the device manufacturers, making sure that all of this data and is really shared amongst all these different types of technologies and state machines, instruments, and all the different parts of the system. So it's incredibly complex to design, make sure these systems are reliable and secure across all of this device ecosystem that I mentioned previously. So when you talked about development challenges, some of these key challenges indicated are high performance requirements. And so, as I mentioned, of course, medical devices, they are safety critical. So those performance requirements for low latency communication, for example, are quite demanding. In addition, these systems often have very long development life cycles because of that complexity and ever increasing complexity and work that needs to be done to not just develop the product but maintain that product in the field for many years. And cybersecurity and the regulatory process for approving devices is very challenging for device manufacturers to address that complexity and security across their device ecosystem. Those are some key hurdles right now that the device companies are dealing with. So in more detail on those design requirements, so what are some of those design requirements? So we're talking about safety, of course, being safety critical. So they have to feel safe. They have to have a lot of design put in on risk mitigations. They have to be highly performant, and essentially that means real time and low latency communication is very important across those systems and networks. They have to be reliable, and that means fault tolerant. Essentially, downtime is really unacceptable, and, obviously is quite a bit of a safety issue if that happens during a procedure. Cybersecurity, I mentioned before, that continues to be a theme, that those devices need to be secure by design. They need to be architected with security in mind, not just really for one component or device, but really across the device ecosystem. And those devices also need to be very interoperable and flexible. Device manufacturers can afford to redesign or re-architect their system every time they need, new features, or there's a new use case, for example, or need to interoperate with new instrumentation. So increasingly focused on software upgradable systems that are continually leveraging newer technologies um, without long delays in development cycles. And then just to emphasize a little more on the security aspect, I think most people are aware of all of those significant challenges there around regulatory approvals and the threat landscape for devices. Obviously, those are medical devices are high value targets. The data and the systems and the regulatory guidances are increasingly becoming, the bar is higher for those regulatory guidances, and the expectations for the device design and really the overall life cycle for those devices is very high. And of course, not to mention all the business risks, trade secrets, IP that could be exposed as a result of a cybersecurity breach. And so, just to talk a little more about design flexibility and what that means. So, in the context of medical devices, that's really about evolving and developing applications that can leverage essentially existing designs and platforms and architectures, and being able to adapt those systems to newer clinical needs and workflows. As we've seen before, there's that need as the needs to change these healthcare systems to be more data centric, to be more interoperable, and really to support the clinical workflows in a more seamless fashion than they do now. And doing that by leveraging these new technologies that are out there in terms of AI and data, and how to more effectively use that data to assess really all the way really at the diagnosis stage, all the way through the surgical phases, all the way up to post-operative as well, and also to integrate all of these intelligent components together to actually have a way of doing all of these things. As I mentioned, there's a need to fuse lots of different types of data sources and technologies and systems to make all this happen. So, what is needed to solve these challenges? As I mentioned, demanding requirements in terms of latency, performance, reliability. That's a key hurdle there to address that. These longer life cycles, well, that needs to be faster. These technologies, while very exciting and can deliver great promise, the increasing complexity of the devices and designing them and supporting and maintaining them, verification, et cetera, that's increasingly becoming a hurdle. And so device companies are looking for reusable and flexible architectures and new ways of doing things, new computing paradigms and abstractions that are more efficient and allow more reliable, stable, and predictable software releases, as well as having scalable and software systems, like I mentioned before, that can be leveraged across product lines and product families. And cybersecurity by design, basically at the whiteboard stage, being able to design these systems so that they are secure, that they're secure according to the different use cases, that for example, a service engineer or the biomed or the R&D engineer, all of these different use cases, for example, they need to be secure, and secure really across the device ecosystem, and the expectations need to be met in that area. So what I'm going to talk is about a data-centric architecture that's really a new paradigm, a new type of technology that addresses these challenges of complexity and abstraction, and is a way to address these challenges. So historically, if we look at this in terms of different types of connectivity and patterns, we start out with a type of point-to-point communication pattern, which is more of an ad hoc pattern that's very much dependent on the different types of devices and logic that these systems need to communicate with, and it's not a very scalable type of communication pattern that is supporting these types of newer technologies. Another evolution in that is to introduce something like a central broker where somewhat consolidates that communication. However, the downside there is now there's a central point of failure if that broker or server goes down, as well as the uh, increase in the computational load on that central server as more nodes, computing nodes, as more types of data are need to be shared. So a newer type of technology is called a data-centric technology. And in this technology, essentially all of the computing nodes are logical peers. And this really enables a very scalable and efficient peer-to-peer communication where there's no single point of failure, there's no central broker, and essentially all of the computing nodes that need data can see that data in real time. And so this is came out of a standard and is a standard that's an open international standard called DDS, and it stands for the Data Distribution Service. And I'm going to talk a little more about this and how it solves these types of challenges. So historical message-based communication, like I alluded to before, is a static type of communication where essentially these boxes could represent different types of sensors or data fusion applications, and these data need to go to different types of systems and requires knowledge of where this data needs to go to, who needs to consume it, where is it going, how many subscribers to that data there need to be. And then as that system grows, it continues to get more complex. Things break, and it's a very hard problem to solve. This type of infrastructure problem that's designed in this fashion. The data-centric architecture is a different type of paradigm where the data centricity is essentially around what's called a data bus, which is essentially, you can imagine a hardware data bus. This is essentially a virtual data bus where all the devices are inherently loosely coupled. All of the applications and sensors are do not require any knowledge of the application that consumes them. So, for example, if I'm the sensor and I need to publish sensor data, I don't need to know anything about the data fusion application that may need to know about that. I just need to publish that sensor data. And similarly, if I'm a data fusion application, I don't need to know about the sensors. I just want to know about the data that I care about. So this is a very powerful computing paradigm and allows architects to essentially design systems around the data. And this is an inherently loosely coupled, decentralized architecture, such that now, as there's new computing nodes that are added to the system, they can essentially come and go, and it is inherently scalable with no single point of failure. And so this is the power of what's called data centricity and is being leveraged today in these next generation architectures. And when you talk about, well, what type of next generation architectures? Well, essentially, this is what you could call a cyber physical system. So in healthcare, for example, when you talk about surgical robotic systems or radiation therapy systems or other types of complex imaging systems, what you're seeing is this essential blueprint for these types of systems that have, for example, sensors that could be different patient monitoring sensors or surgical robotics instrumentation. That data needs to be in real time sensed and sent to different types of applications for control or processing, and then those on the control side, that often something needs to happen. For example, for a surgical robot, those devices need to operate to control some sort of device to provide the treatment, and then all of that needs to be also shared and configured with some sort of interface. That could either be a remote interface, it could be a local interface, and then that's not enough. Those systems and in and of themselves, as that device ecosystem matures, that can easily expand to other systems and systems of systems. So having this is essentially a common blueprint, not just for complex medical devices, but really for safety critical um, cyber physical systems, really across industries. And the power of this technology is it doesn't matter what type of application specifically is that we're talking about, because it is this decentralized real-time platform that really can leverage all of these, um, you know, basically be leveraged for all of these different types of systems and applications in a very scalable way. So this is essentially the power of what this type of technology provides. So to summarize on these benefits, the data essentially is the interface. So that's very much a key point of this new computing paradigm. It's inherently loosely coupled. It's actually highly configurable in terms of what's the type of data. If I need to add, for example, more sensors and more types of actuators, again, that's not an issue because the data is the interface, not other applications or systems. It's independent of transport. So by that I mean, wired or wireless, 5G. It's really independent of any type of transport with no single point of failure. It's inherently reliable and scalable, and as well as highly secure. So because of the natural decentralization of this, this DDS standard also includes a standard for security. And what that allows is the data itself to be very finely grained and controlled on in terms of authentication and encryption. And so essentially what you're doing there is you're securing the data, and you're not securing messages, you're not securing endpoints, which are increasingly becoming blurred, for example. So this is a very powerful, enables essentially zero trust principles for those aspects in terms of authentication, in terms of data centricity and least privilege, can be very finely tuned because of this type of technology. And so the other big benefit of this, aside from simplifying the architecture, is also the fact that it provides a level of abstraction. So a lot of the advances in computing technologies come out of abstraction. And so what we're seeing in this scenario is device companies previously having to worry about a lot of the logic and development work to implement state machines and messaging and things, for example, to really do essentially the plumbing of all the messaging that needs to happen in the system. So with these types of technologies, it essentially handles that. So it's the applications and the software architects and teams can really focus on developing the clinical applications and the application logic, while this type of technology and middleware essentially handles not just provides that architecture, but also handles the under the hood details of all the messaging and a lot of features in terms of discovery and quality of service, for example, that would have had to been completely developed and maintained and verified in-house. So this is something that is a huge leap forward in terms of accelerating application development and leveraging state-of-the-art technologies that are specifically designed for this purpose and for these types of systems. So what does this look like for example, for an imaging system? So an imaging system, you can imagine, is made up of many different subsystems, hardware and software. So providing this natural decoupling of systems and subsystems essentially allows virtual data buses to be constructed in a way that suits the application. And that is entirely up to the architects and how that's done. But essentially, it enables natural decoupling depending on the type of data that needs to be shared. And this is extremely powerful. So for example, now if I'm designing this type of system and I need to update, let's say, the image generation subsystem, I can do that independently of other systems or other domains that are part of the system, which is incredibly powerful in terms of having a scalable architecture and also enables safety and security as well. For the surgical robotics platforms, what does that look like? Well, we're seeing these types of decoupling as well, because now you can have sensor data and control data and robotics data, which essentially are all different types of data sources with different needs. But again, having that natural decoupling, providing that architecture while also providing that under the hood mechanics as well, enables that efficient development and also scales this essential virtual data bus, not just locally, but also essentially up to the cloud. And we're seeing is that this more and more is that the need for data and to really do something intelligent. And that's it's not just in the cloud; it's at the edge where the data processing is happening. There's more and more data, more and more sensors being connected, high speed, and what can we do at the point of care, what can we do locally to really enable that functionality. And so this type of technology is a big enabler for that, but as well as also being able to be scaled across other types of domains. In the critical care scenario, it's a similar type of view. In this case, you have instead of, let's say, robotic arms and controls. In this case, you have ventilators and infusion pumps and monitors that all need to share data in real time. They need to do something intelligent, and having this type of architecture is really important because now, again, it's about the data being able to have that safety critical, no single point of failure, low latency type of communication that is incredibly scalable. So you can imagine the amount of devices around a patient bed and scaling that to the number of beds in an ICU and to other ICUs, for example. Now you're talking about massive scalability. So this type of scalability is possible with this type of technology that is data centric. So, in summary, then this technology really provides these fundamental benefits in terms of reliability and performance and fault tolerance. It allows inherent flexibility in terms of architectures and lower lifecycle costs, as well as being standards based. And finally, it's also inherently secure. It's also based on a standard that is a secure standard as well, and it enables the industry requirements for cybersecurity. And it's inherently also decentralized and enables the application of these zero trust principles. So these key benefits really are enabling all of these systems to work as one system. It allows these components really to essentially have this integrated type of solution. And this is what the leading technology companies are using today to really accelerate their solutions in a way that is advancing the really next generation of devices and healthcare. Okay, I'd like to just give a quick introduction into RTI. So RTI provides a software communication framework that's being used in over 1,800 systems across aerospace, defense, and healthcare. We're a leader in over 20 industry standards. We have commercial and university research programs, as well as global offices around the world. Thank you very much for attending.